Hello, my name is Eva Howe, and welcome to Vue Meetup Online. We're really glad to have you today. Our sponsor today is This.Labs. This.Labs is a tech consultancy, and we do all things front-end and JavaScript. If you need some help with something, we'd love to come help. And then a little announcements. We do these framework-specific events each week, once a month. So our next one is going to be on November 7th, and that will be Angular Online. And then we have React Online on November 14th, and then Vue Online again on November 21st. Our speakers today are Daniel and Honey. They're going to give some fantastic talks. Little schedule. I'm doing my little welcome slides, and then Daniel will go first, and then Honey will go next, and then we'll have a little closing notes and goodbye. And for everybody that's tuning in, we will do questions in between. So if you have questions for the speakers, please put them in the chat. And I will unshare my screen. And Daniel, you can take it away.
Great. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out this. Okay. How's this?
Yep, there you are.
Okay. I hope like the Zoom stuff doesn't show. It's like the side panel with every, okay, that's cool then. Okay. Hey, I'll be presenting something on building real-time applications with Vue.js. And I put an asterisk on the real-time because one, lots of people have arguments around how to spell it, and lots of people have arguments around what exactly real-time is. And hopefully I can help clear some of those doubts. I should have put my name here. I'm Daniel Phiri. I'm an organizer of DevCon Zambia. That's Zambia's annual developer conference. I come from Zambia, by the way. I'm also a developer relations engineer at PubNub. And if you want to catch me on Twitter, that's at Malgamdes. So yeah, the last one says I'm a bedroom DJ. I do these mixes that I almost never share with anyone, but I think I've started to put them out on my Twitter. So there's one reason to follow me. Yeah, so I'll be speaking on building real-time applications with Vue.js. And I was supposed to really talk about how I built this really cool project, this really cool chat, real-time chat with Vue, but the demo gods went very kind today, so I had to spit something up. And today I'll be presenting something that I really enjoyed building. This is it. So real-time charts with GraphQL. There's still Vue though. So the story behind this is just, it was a few months ago, Game of Thrones was still going on, and I was still tinkering around with GraphQL and Vue, of course. And there was this huge episode, I think it was the third episode, I don't really remember right now, but there was this huge battle, and I was like, hey, let me just build a voting app and see who people think might not make it, like at the end of the episode. So I'll be showing a demo of that so that you can understand it better. So like, just so that you can actually see how real-time, air quotes, it is, this is a demo application. That's a link, and you can actually try it out now. So I had to clear everything out, but I had about 170,000 votes in total before I like reset everything. You can go there right now. I'm on my phone right now voting, so you can see everything changing in real time. And I'll just switch to that. Eva, if you could help me out, I hope this is showing. Okay, yeah, I mean, I see people voting at the moment, so that's good.
It is showing, yep.
Cool. So, like you can see, there's the total number of votes that's changing as people on the site click, and then there's the animations and the visualization is changing also, and then you can actually see the numbers change, and yeah, it's a really cool visual. So we'll get back to this. I like looking at the charts go up and down. So this is just an overview of what this is. We're looking at how it works, how exactly the whole application works. And spoiler, not really spoiled. I think I mentioned it. I built it with GraphQL. I'm just looking at how each of the GraphQL specific operations work in app and how to set that up with Vue. And then we'll be looking at the real-time portion in subscriptions. Also, there's like a illustration picture at the bottom of my slide. That's my website. So if you want to check me out, that's it. So this is basically how it works. So in the front end, like I mentioned, I used Vue.js and Chart.js, and in the back end, I used the Azure GraphQL engine. Why I used Chart.js was because Chart.js it's like a really cool JavaScript library that has got like cool APIs for visualizations, and it really, there's like a Vue specific wrapper, and it just makes it really easy to, not easy, but like much more streamlined to put in visualizations in Vue applications. So I'll just jump into the code and show how I implemented this. So you can see I have a component called bar.chart.js. So let me just make this a bit bigger. Yeah, so I have bar.chart.js, and this uses Vue.js. That's like the Vue wrapper of Chart.js, and I want a horizontal bar chart, so that's why I import that and the mixins. And then all I do is put in some props, the chart data and options, because then when I use the component in app.vue, I put in the chart data and options, and I just initialize things like width and height, and I use like Vue if loaded, because I don't want data to like not show if the chart data doesn't come in, so it should only show if the data is loaded, and then that's the Vue part, and then this bar chart.js is a chart.js version, and then there's the GraphQL version. So one really cool tool that I don't think I mentioned in my slides is the GraphQL to chart.js, because they don't really speak the same language. The Azure team built this really cool tool that converts or lets chart.js understand GraphQL data, and that's what I'm importing here. So that's just like a brief overview of the app, the GraphQL version, like the GraphQL portion, the Vue portion, and the chart.js portion. And then we'll get deeper into it as we go on. And that's really how the application works. And then I didn't really want to touch on the back end, but those who might not know exactly what Thakuria does. So they've got a GraphQL API over a Postgres database, and this is just how my data looks. So I have like an ID of each name or each character, and the character's name and the number of votes each character has. And then that's all I pass into my, that's all I'm requesting basically with my GraphQL queries, mutations, and subscriptions. So the GraphQL operations, so there's a few things that you need to know about GraphQL operations before we go into this. And for those who might not know it, GraphQL is just like a query language for APIs. You request data and you say how you want the data to come in, and that's exactly how you get the data. And then for the specific applications, we use queries in general just for read. And then I want to show a specific portion of the application where I'm using queries. So back to the app. So one thing we're doing is we're using queries to show each and every character in the chart. So we just read the character names from the database, and then we display it here. And then that's this portion of the code. So what we're doing is we have character name for characters using v4, and then binding that with the character ID, and then displaying each and every character that we get in the response from the database. And initially we used a query here, but we had to change it over to a subscription because then the data changes. We'll talk more about live updates and subscriptions. And then we have mutations for writes. And when we click a button, all that is doing is sending an increment to the database and saying someone has voted for someone, and then that changes. So whenever we click here, it's a mutation that occurs. So on we use the @click, and then I'll just scroll down. Here you can see we're using Apollo mutate, and then we have a mutation. I'll show all the GraphQL operations, by the way. We store, I decided to have like a central store of every GraphQL operation. So that's mutations, the queries, and the subscriptions. So this is a mutation that gets triggered when we click on a specific character. And so it's just updating the character and incrementing that. And then this is the query that I explained before, where we read each and every character with the ID and the name. We use the ID to bind them, to use the vbind, and then the name, we actually display the name. And then the other part is subscriptions, which I'll get into. And then we use subscriptions for live queries. So what live queries are just, we subscribe to a specific query, and then whenever there's an update made to the data we're subscribing to, that update is sent to us, and then that is rendered on the screen, which you can see here with total votes changing every time we update the vote data for a character. And you can see that in the visualization. So Davos, for example, when we vote and when we click Davos, we see something changing. And then we can actually see there's 2 votes for Davos. And that's really how GraphQL specific operations are handled in this application. And setting it up, so to set it up, really we import and we have to install a few dependencies. One that I really want to highlight that is pivotal to actually having like real-time data is this Apollo link WebSocket. So that's the WebSocket link. GraphQL uses WebSockets to make subscriptions happen. If we just navigate to our main.js file, we can see we are using WebSocket link WS, and we have a link. We add a URI for the WebSocket here, and then that's how we get subscriptions. And then we have a few more things that we need to make this work, like Apollo split. So depending on what operation you're running, either a query or a subscription, it does something different. I won't really go in detail with each and everything here, but I will link to some really cool resources. Yeah, I didn't really explain the subscriptions portion. Now that we've seen something really pivotal to actually making subscriptions work, that being the WebSocket link, we can go into our GraphQL.js file where we have all our GraphQL operations defined and look at exactly what's going on. So this subscription, the all vote subscription, is a little different from the other ones, because this is what we're actually using for Chart.js. So we have to actually use the format that Chart.js needs so that we can actually make the updates happen in real time. And then the subscription here below, I think I have used a few other GraphQL clients, and I think this is very specific. We just get an aggregate of the character data, and then we can use that aggregate and get a sum of the votes, and then we keep getting like updates whenever that changes through the subscription. And that's that implementation. And now I want to jump into like the Vue portion and how we handle that. So maybe I didn't explicitly mention it, but I'm using Apollo to query, to talk to my GraphQL API and use this subscribe method. And we have, because we have two subscription, one for votes and one for the sum of votes. And we have some GraphQL to Nuxt.JS specific things that we do here in order to actually get the data rendered and have the updates appear. Yeah. And like I mentioned, WebSockets are what GraphQL uses to get to implement subscriptions. And that's something that's really important. And I did mention there's lots of arguments around what exactly real-time data is. So I did a bit of research, and really, I think this is a definition that I can really agree with. So real-time is just synchronous bidirectional data, bidirectional communication between endpoints that happens in less than, and I put an asterisk on the 250 milliseconds because I think it's relative how long it takes for humans to actually notice the difference or like the lag. And I think 250 milliseconds is a good trade-off. So the synchronous part is basically just having access to data at the same time, and bidirectional being data sent in either direction between endpoints, and these are endpoints are just senders or receivers. So in our case, using the application, we have every person who is actually voting or clicking a button can be counted as an endpoint. And because I don't have to wait for someone else to not click to receive an update, that communication is bi-directional in that everything I send, I'm also receiving updates from other people doing the same thing. And then synchronous also, we do have access to the data at the same time. I haven't done any book tests on how long it actually does take, but I think that's specific on your bandwidth and your internet and so many other factors, packets dropping and things like that. But yeah, because like I've had a lot of people. I did a blog post about this, and I'll link that at the end. And when I said I built an application, a really proof of concept application that shows how GraphQL can be used to build real-time applications. I got a lot of people saying GraphQL real-time, sure, yeah, like sarcastically. So it just depends on your definition of real-time at the end of the day. So these are some resources. It's if you actually want to dive deeper into the code, there's the GitHub repo. And if you want to read the detailed blog post, see all the things that I imported and get like a step-by-step tutorial on how to actually build this out, then there's a link to that on Dev2, and there are a lot more links to other very GraphQL specific things that are covered in the post and on the repository. And thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Sorry, a little laggy today. Thank you so much, Daniel. Let's see. Our next speaker is going to be Honey. Would you like to take it away? And if you go a bit over 20 minutes, that's totally fine.
Okay, fine. Thanks a lot. So,
no worries.
Let me get started. So here I go. Everyone is able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, fine. So, hello everyone. Today talk is about building modular universal SP using Nuxt.JS. So, let me give you all a brief introduction about first me, and then I will getting started with building the app. So, myself, Thakuria, I'm working as a software engineer too with AirAsia and building a flight platform for AirAsia. Previously, I worked with companies in media as well as some small startups in edtech area, and I've worked across Node, Vue, React, and as a full stack developer. So the agenda of today's talk will be intro to SSR and Nuxt.js and a demo showing the above two things and the best practices to get started for a Nuxt project. So today's era is all about creating a single page application. So let me talk a brief about single page application. Single page application are client side applications which runs and doesn't require a reload, and they download all the assets at one go. So the advantages of single page application are that it's faster development for developer as well as better performance for everyone. But again, with single page application, there comes certain disadvantages. It's like that single page applications are not SEO friendly, and faster time to content is also a problem. So to address this phenomena, SSR came into the picture. So let me first explain you how SSR, that is server side render, and client side render, that is CSR, that is the normal single page application works. So let's focus on the bottom half, the how our traditional how a single page application client side rendering works. So as soon as you give a request to download to a particular website, our browser first gets a HTML response which is quite empty. It is having a links to JavaScript files, but HTML content is not there. So our HTML file gets downloaded, and then what happens, browser gets the links to those JS files, and browser starts downloading the JavaScript files also. And then browser executes, suppose it's a Vue application, browser executes Vue. It's applicable across Angular as well as React for single page applications. And till this time, we don't have anything on screen because we haven't got the content. So browser executes a Vue, it's then gets the data using Ajax, and then finally Vue code got executed. We got the content, and page is finally viewable and interactable. So at this point in client-side rendering single page application, we get the first time to content. Okay, so this is how CSR works, and then now let's go to how server-side rendering works. And if during that process, we'll be able to see that what kind of advantage server-side rendering is giving to us. So now just focus on the top half. So we are talking about the SSR approach. So in SSR approach, server-side rendering, server sends a HTML response to the browser. So here what happens, the page that we have requested, suppose a particular product section of e-commerce site, if it is a server-side rendered, we get that product catalog page having product rendered and a JavaScript file for other pages linked up. So as soon as the browser gets the page with HTML and JavaScript files involved in it, a browser starts rendering that HTML content, and as well as it starts downloading the JS, which is needed to again go to other pages so that they are viewable and they are interactable. So at this time only in the server-side rendering, we are getting, we are able to see the content on the screen. Okay. And then what happens, browser downloads the other JavaScript files which are needed for other pages. Then browser executes those JavaScript files and then executes a view, and then the page is interactable. Basically, we can start navigating to the other pages. So this was the server-side rendering process where we were able to see the content comparatively early as compared to client-side rendering process. So now let's talk about a few observations here. So few observation. First observation, document size of a server-side rendering is bigger. So as we saw in the previous slide, HTML is coming for that particular page along with a bunch of JavaScript files in case of server-side rendering. So yeah, document size of SSR should be bigger. I think it's logical. In client-side rendering, that is a single page application normal case, we are only getting the empty page with a linked of JS file. So that's issue there. Then it goes, SSR time to first byte is lower than CSR as server needs time to create the HTML response. So this is an disadvantage of server-side rendering, because server needs time to convert the HTML content. So it is comparatively slower as compared to CSR. In CSR, the server will just send the application with the JS files tagged to it. And then the third point, SSR throughput of server is relatively slow, because Webpack configuration will go there if it's case of the new modern web applications built using Vue or React. So server needs to build a thing, and then everything synchronous operations will happen. Ajax requests will be resolved there at the server itself. So throughput of a server is relatively slow. So with this observations, we cannot comment that server-side rendering is a good thing or client-side rendering is a bad thing. It depends on the use cases. Let's cover those use cases in the next slide. So now I think everyone will be able to understand what server-side rendering is. It's a technique of rendering a client-side only single-page application on the server side and sending the fully rendered page to the client. From here, our JavaScript bundles executes, downloads and executed, and then the complete site become interactable. Why do we need SSR? First point is better SEO, as generally crawlers, when they hit the server, they need the complete page, the complete web page, so they can see the content. So if it's case of SSR, the page will be rendered on the server itself. Then crawlers will be able to see the content there itself, and then it's basically better for SEO purpose. And the second point, it's faster time to contain. So as we saw in the previous slides, that the page rendering in case of server-side rendering is pretty early than client-side rendering. Okay, so SSR is useful for both SEO as well as faster time to contain. But again, there is a cost that we need to pay. It's like that when the hits on the server is high, then the server, the bandwidth, the CPU that it will consume will be high, because it has to build a page for those many requests. And we can also get involved with certain caching strategies, reverse processing strategies, but still it's costlier than the single page application. So when we need to decide when to go and when not to go to SSR, we need to consider you should not go for server-side rendering, but you should go for a client-side rendering. So I think everyone is got clear with now when to go for SSR and not to go for SSR. So now let's talk about Nuxt.JS. So Nuxt.JS is a minimalistic framework for server-side rendered Vue.js apps. Okay, it's built using Vue 2, Vue Router, Vuex, and Vue Meta. Okay, to get started with Nuxt is pretty simple. We just need to put some command, npx create Nuxt app. Npx is a tool that comes with the Node 10 by default, and then the project name, and then Nuxt initialize our project. So just a minute. Directory structure, which Nuxt goes with. It has assets, components. I'm going to show this directory structure while doing for demo. Layouts, middleware, pages, plugins, static, store, and Nuxt config file. So I will talk in detail about this files and folders in the upcoming slides, as well as the demo. And then again comes the Nuxt.JS lifecycle. So like the Vue lifecycle, we have certain like lifecycle methods: before created, before mounted, before updated. So same lifecycles are applicable for Nuxt.js, as well as on top of that, Nuxt.js is a framework built on Vue, so it has its own certain lifecycle methods which are very essential if you want to build a scalable application. So as soon as the incoming request comes, it goes to Nuxt server init function, and then Nuxt server init is a store action to fetch the data on the server side, and then the request pass through a middleware. Middleware are predefined functions applied to pages, and then we go to validate the method to validate the params. I will be again showing all these methods in the demo. So rest assured, you will get a more clarity at that point of time. And then async data and fetch, these are optional, but matter to load the data outside the store. And then the page gets rendered. And now if we go to other page on the client side, then we directly land up via middleware, and then we get the page rendered. So let's switch to demo now. So are you people, Eva, are able to see the screen?
Yep, I can see it. We lost you for a few minutes back there, but it seems to be all good now.
Okay. Sorry for inconvenience. And let's get started. So this is the demo. I will be covering all the things that I covered in the slides during the demo. So this is one of my portfolio which I just got started with, and I will be covering all the things here. So let's see how things works here. As I showed you, like when you get started with NPX Nuxt Create App project, then you get this project structure. The project structure is pretty explanative, self-explanatory. So we have an assets folder where all the assets goes, and the components where actually the reusable components go. And then we have a disk when the project gets built. So, and then we have a layouts folder. Layouts folder is for the reusable components. We have a middleware. A middleware gets called before a particular page. Then we have a pages directory. So if everyone is familiar with the Vue routing configuration, so Nuxt follows routing configuration using paired pages. So if you can see, I am on a page called blocks. So how blocks goes is like that. To create a page called blocks, I have to create a folder under the pages directory called blocks, and the index.vue will return me the by default a blocks page. If we need to pass in params and inside the blocks page, then we need to create an underscore id.vue, which actually captures the params. And then
not sharing your screen.
Hello.
Yeah, I think you are not sharing your screen. We can just see the slides.
Okay, sorry. Resumes here.
Hello. Yeah, I think it's just showing personal websites with SSR.
Okay, now can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Actually, I need to put it in again the mode so that everything gets shared. Advanced portion of the screen.
Sometimes it gets a little tricky going back and forth between slides and console. And like,
are you able to see the
We're seeing your screen, but you're really zoomed in at the moment.
Is it fine now?
Looks good now.
Okay, but I think I have to again, it's Mac and I have to. So every time I will change the share string. Okay, so is it good now? So let me again repeat. Sorry for again the inconvenience. So Nuxt comes up with its default folder structure: assets, components, layouts, middleware, pages. So let's go to the again my present demo. Then I will again come back to the folder structure so that you will get a overview how things works. So just a minute. Are you able to see the demo screen? Hello?
I'm seeing your sum of my publications screen.
Yeah. So this is the sample application that I've got started with the Nuxt project. So let me go through the lifecycle events that I discussed earlier. So here you can see this application is created through Nuxt project. So Nuxt project, every route goes via the pages folder. So if we can see, this is the blogs route, and this is the contact us page. So how we got started is like that. There are certain lifecycle events. So if I reload this blog space, so we will see certain lifecycle hooks happening here. So you can see Nuxt server init got called. So Nuxt server init is a store method which actually helps in fetching the data on the server side. Then we got passed through a middleware. I will again show these things in a code level also, but let's see how these things were working. Then a middleware called for the blocks detail page, so this page. And then we got before create and created Nuxt server cycle method. So this lifecycle hooks gets executed on the server side. Then we have before mount and mounted, which actually happened on the client side. So there is always a trade-off. In case of server-side rendering, we need to if we need to be cautious, because server-side rendering has a cost involved with it, because a lot of processing gets happened at the server end. So we need to see that we need to decide what kind of and what amount of data we need to fetch on the server side, and what amount of data can be then called using AJAX request on the client side. So that trade-off gets explained here. So basically in this case, I'm fetching all the blocks contained on a server side, and then I'm coming on a client side. So let's keeping these things in the mind, let's go to the code level. I will explain you that how I came up with this model in Nuxt.js configuration. Are you people able to see the code VS Code editor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So all these things that we discussed there. So let's go to this blocks page. So blocks page is the blocks index.vue. If you can see, the pages folder is a blocks again directory. So this blocks directory with index.vue is by default the file that gets rendered once you load your route/blocks. Okay. So with this file, let me tell you that how we have configured it. So we are using Vuex store for it. So first of all, what happens? A Nuxt server init method gets called. So let's go to our store, Vuex store. So let me tell you. So by default, the index.js, this time the store is in the modular format. So for the block section, I've created a particular file called blocks.js. And for the other section of the application, we have that standard index.js. So what happens, as I showed you in the Nuxt server lifecycle method, first method that gets called is a Nuxt server init. So in this case, so actions, mutations, and state. Actions are for like asynchronous operations, which then finally called mutations. Mutations have access to state and they can change the state. And finally, when the state gets changed, it gets it's a single direction flow that happens from top store to components. So what happens? Nuxt server init method, when it gets called, here we are using async and await. So we are dispatching an action called blocks fetch blocks. So just again, remember the blocks that we saw in the block section, some of my publications. So as soon as this action gets dispatched, here the action goes to the blocks file in then a fetch block action. So if you can see again on the blocks.js file, we have fetch blocks. So what fetch blocks does is like that. We are again here using a set timeout. I'm just saying you how promise gets worked. So within 300 millisecond time, I'm setting certain blocks, which actually gets stored in my state. And then this state gets passed in a unidirectional way from the store to the components. And my components here is this page, pages, blocks, and then I'm coming to the index.vue. And here, what I've done is like that. I've created a certain lifecycle hooks before created, before mount, and mounted. So these are getting followed in that order. But as we are getting the data from Nuxt server init function, so data gets passed first. And then we have configured this page with the middleware VM. So if we go to the middleware VM, so if you can remember, first Nuxt server init fetch the data for us, and then the middleware came into the picture. Middleware did its duty. In this case, we are just logging our URL, but we can do certain functions like our authentication, logging. A lot of things can be done here. So if a user is not authenticated, he doesn't have particular roles, we can again redirect him to her or to other pages. So these things can be done in middleware. And then finally, person reaches to our blocks component, and then this is how hierarchy goes. So one important thing here, let me show you the power of Nuxt server init function. So let's go again. So let's see, in this process, you will be able to see that how costly things happens on the server side. So let's, so I'm returning the blocks data after 300 milliseconds. So let's do it, suppose 3000. So this time, we have increased the time. So till this 3 seconds, our Nuxt server init function will keep on waiting for the data to get loaded on the server side. Once we get the data, then things will come to the client side and the page will be rendered. So let's again go back to the screen and let's see how this loading works. So I think I'm back on the screen. Everyone can see the screen.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, just a minute. So if you can see now, right now, this 3 seconds, till 3 seconds, our actions were waiting to get completed on the server side, and then finally the page got rendered. So like this, if a lot of async operations are there on our server side, Nuxt server is init method, like we are suppose calling several APIs to fetch the data, it will ultimately take a lot of time, and our throughput of the server will get reduced, and it will be a costly operation and will get a lot of cloud cost. So when to go for server side and when not to go to client side, it is always a trade-off. So we need to decide from a business point of view, from customer point of view, that what's important for us, and then we need to decide how much content when we can put on backend, how much content we can again bring to the client side in the mountain method. So I think everyone got a understanding how like Nuxt server init and how Nuxt project gets in a working condition. So let's again go back to the slides and see some of the best practices for Nuxt applications. So everyone can see the slides again?
Yep, I
Yes.
sure can.
So this was the project, and then again, this project, Nuxt project, I have deployed it on Netlify, and like the project version controlling is done on GitHub. And while doing this project, I again came to a good method to like again save my time for a manual deployment, that was using the continuous deployment and integration pipeline given by Netlify. So push into Nuxt.js to my GitHub repo, and I've configured the GitHub repo to the Netlify. So the hooks gets configured to it. So every time I push the code gets picked up by Netlify pipelines, and then Netlify run my command to build a static application, and then this application gets deployed, and within a fraction of minutes, all this gets happened. So this is again one of the best practice which people can use to like have a faster deployment process. So deployment strategies, again for Nuxt.js, let's you choose between 3 modes to deploy your application. So Nuxt is a framework. Okay. So it can be used to create single page applications also. Server-side rendering was earlier tough with Vue.js, so Nuxt made it easy. So if we Nuxt.js can help us creating 3 kind of deployment strategies: server-side rendered application, the application that I just showed you in the universal SSR mode; static generated deployment, the pre-rendered where we build a project and we deploy it. So in case of a Netlify deployment, I'm just doing a static generated deployment. And in case of universal SSR, we need a node server to be running every time. So it's again a costly operation. So yeah. And third is single page application deployment. We can build a single page application and deploy it in a traditional way. But again, with single page application deployment, we might lose certain things like faster time to content as well as SEO friendliness. So based on our use case, we can use Nuxt for any of these 3 deployment strategies, and Nuxt will be a one-stop solution for everything. And we can also configure our project in such a way that we are using Nuxt server init and other methods in a configurable way, so that a same code base can be used for server-side rendering as well as the client-side rendering. I think with my demo, you were able to figure out that where we can go for server-side deployment, and when like how can we go for client-side. We just need to like decide between Nuxt server init and async await and other features. Okay. And again, a good question. So when and when not to use Nuxt. So Nuxt is a good choice when we have to create a universal project without hassle. So the project hierarchy, the directory structure is so easy. Everything is there, middleware to store to layouts. So it's very easy. Scalable modular project structure by default, as I explained in the previous line, it's not a good choice when we are migrating a tightly coupled legacy applications to single page application. So when we are migrating a tightly coupled legacy application, suppose a PHP MySQL website, and we have a lot of code there, we have HTML and PHP syntax coupled up. So we cannot like on a one go, we can go to a Nuxt project. I think in that case, as Vue is a progressive framework, so we should first, Vue can be implemented on every page. So we should focus on converting our legacy application page by page to a Vue application. And then once the project is completely Vue, in Vue, we can think of migrating it to Nuxt, because during the migration from legacy application to the Vue progressive application, we might have converted the application into reusable components. So now those components can be used and clubbed easily in the Nuxt application. And as well as Nuxt is not a good choice when we want to develop a small widget for an existing application. So yeah. So these are the two cases where I will not prefer like to go with Nuxt, because simply you will be clueless how to go to Nuxt. But again, you're starting a project from scratch. You need a server-side rendered application. You need a customer-facing application where SEO is must for you. I think Nuxt is the best choice to get started. And even I, as a developer, have developed a few of a very customer facing important applications, very big applications, serving millions of users using Nuxt. And when we got started, we were a little scared, but things went in a very well mannered way. So, and it was a hassle free experience for us. And then again, a few best practices. So Nuxt helps us in providing the page level SEO. So in every page, we can configure our SEO in a head method where we can provide title metadata. So in this way, page level SEO can be configured. So if you want to see the code level, let me show you. So if you can see in one of our page, that is a blog page. So inside the head method, we have defined the its metadata, its content. And suppose for another page, we have its own metadata. If you can see, it's another contact space. So in the head method, if you define, we have its own metadata. So page level SEO can be configured in using the head functions. We need to provide HID, name, and content. So this is how crawlers will crawl the data. And yeah, this is again a big benefit which using Vue Meta Nuxt provides us. And if you want to configure a site level standard process, then that can be configured in the nuxtconfig.js. Okay. So the next point that I will be showing you is reusable layouts. So Nuxt give us default layouts which we configure and which will be rendered for every page. So if you can see, we have a default configurations, that is header, footer, and a page content between it. So now what happens for any of the project, any of the pages, we have header and footer first involved there. So now we just need to put that page content, header and footer will be involved by default. So let's again go back to the slides. So yeah, I think everyone is able to see. So this is the SEO level config. And then the reusable layout, as I showed you in the code. So if you define a particular layout, and it will be followed across all the pages. But if we have a custom layout which we need for particular 3 or 4 or a specific page, then in the custom layout, in the layouts, we can define that particular layout.view, and then we can again include it in the pages using the layout attribute. And then store should always be in the modular mode. As I showed you in my code, I did create 2 files, the index.js, the blog.js. When we have a very big, huge website, If the store is in the modular form, then it's too easy for developer to, as well as if you touch that code like after going ahead at the point of time, it's become very easy to make a sense out of code that what's going where. So store in a modular form is again a best strategy that we should follow, and it's not only limited to Nuxt project. Any Vue project, store in a modular form can be very helpful for us. Then dynamic routes, as I showed you in a block session, we have underscore id.vue and index.vue. So if we have params associated with a particular route, we should have to go like this way, and this params can again be fetched inside our pages folder. And we have again index.vue that's good for the standard, and again we have a nested route. Then again we can follow the strategy. So like routing becomes very easy if we follow this structure. And then scope CSS, it's again general Vue application. So in previous projects where I worked, if we reached to a situations where when we didn't follow the proper guidelines, that CSS was leaking from one component and it was affecting globally some other components. So if we are getting started, we should use scope attributes so that things will always be streamlined, and like followed properly at later stages, we will be able to edit the changes very easily. And I think I'm done with my presentation. There is one more application that I created using Nuxt and Vue. So the links are there on my slides. You can always go through it, and thanks a lot. So this completes my presentation. I hope you made a sense out of it.
Thanks so much, Honey. We really appreciate it. It was a great presentation. Do we have, I'm not seeing any questions to the speakers. Is there anything else that I missed that maybe somebody would like to ask before we sign off? All right, I'll take that as a no. Thank you guys so much for attending.